Xtalks connects professionals in the life science, medical device, and food industries with useful content like webinars, job openings, articles, and virtual meetings to help you succeed in your career. This food industry-focused podcast brings together some of our editorial staff to share insights into the latest B2B industry news to help keep you up to date.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Xtalks Food Podcast. I'm Sydney Perlmutter, Senior Food Industry Journalist and Webinar Moderator at Xtalks.com, and this week I'm joined by Vera Kovacevic. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, so I'm going to start us off with a regulatory story. So the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, it recently released a sort of info sheet about the presence of lead in food, which to them, it still remains sort of a critical concern. Now, lead, which is a toxic metal, it can enter the food supply through environmental contamination during the growing, raising, or processing of foods. And even with significant reduction of lead usage in industrial applications, residues from historical practices still pose a risk. So that obviously necessitates pretty stringent regulatory oversights. So what's the FDA's framework on lead? Lead contamination in food, it can arise from various environmental sources, including past usage of lead in paint, gasoline, and plumbing materials. And despite the elimination of many lead-based products in the US, certain goods, especially those imported, may still contain lead. And given that no safe level of lead exposure has been established, the FDA takes a proactive role in monitoring and regulating lead levels in food to protect public health. So the FDA employs a rigorous process to determine if lead levels in food constitute a health risk. And this process includes assessing the toxicity of lead, the concentration detected in food products, and the estimated consumption rate. And special attention is given to vulnerable populations, such as young children, who are particularly susceptible to adverse effects of lead exposure. So if lead levels in food products are found to be unsafe, the FDA is authorized to take regulatory actions. And these may range from working with manufacturers to reduce lead levels to restricting the distribution of affected products in the U.S. market. So, from your scientific perspective, I'm curious, to know. We've always heard about, lead exposure being bad. Is there anything you can tell me about why it's bad?
Yeah, so for sure, it's not good. Lead is a heavy metal. It's not a natural mineral that we humans need for our bodily function, for our functions, yeah. Right? And therefore it is toxic to us, not only to us, but also to many other animals as well. It causes various toxicities. I think the most prevalent one is neurotoxicity. So it's quite dangerous, should be avoided at all costs, especially not in food products.
Right.
I'm just curious, Sydney, what are the types of foods that are more susceptible to having higher concentrations of lead?
That is a very good question. The two that come to mind just from, what I've written about in the past, recently cinnamon we talked about, having high lead levels or potentially high lead levels due to crops that were grown near soils with high lead concentration, can absorb the lead. And in that case, cinnamon was sort of a victim of higher lead levels. Another one that I've spoken about was dark chocolate. I believe for similar reasons. Cadmium was also found in dark chocolate. So cadmium and lead were the two, things that were found in dark chocolate. I think for similar reasons, where they were grown, it contains higher heavy metal content.
So it's the coca plants and then the cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
Yeah. So it's the coca plants and the cinnamon.
Yes.
That they absorb lots of lead from the soil.
Yes, from the soil. From older pipes, it seems.
That's
corroding pipes.
Little leakage into the drinking water.
Yeah, it's that easy. It's that quick. And another one that we talked about, and I think it's other heavy metals, is baby food.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not sure about lead.
Wasn't it the infant formula?
Yes, it actually is. It is.
What do they have again? Like the remember how last year you wrote a lot about how infant formula was like had trace amounts of, was that lead?
It was lead, actually.
Okay.
I'm just on the story that I wrote about. It was February of last year, and it was another FDA plan called the Closer to Zero Action Plan, which the whole thing is just aiming to reduce lead levels in baby food. And obviously, this is the most concerning one because, as we were talking about, younger, like children and babies are more susceptible to lead poisoning and should be exposed even less than humans are, grown humans.
Exactly.
So they're working on it. And it seems that this new page from the FDA is just focusing on others beyond babies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you know when you wrote about like the baby food, I think it was baby formula contamination with lead story, was that from a manufacturing process? I'm just thinking like it's easier for lead to seep into plants, but then it actually getting to like dairy products, milk.
Yeah.
I think how did that even happen, that whole story last year?
I think it is. Yeah, it's during the manufacturing process.
Okay. So that's another source.
Yes, it's a
food.
Different source. Exactly.
Okay.
So yeah, with the dark chocolate and the cinnamon, that's from sort of pipes
soil
and soil.
Yeah.
But this
Pipes.
these are during the manufacturing process.
Okay. So there's several things that can cause lead in food.
Oh yeah, several things. And the good news is that they all seem to be preventable.
Yes.
Yeah, like there are solutions to this. And in terms of, industry responsibility and compliance, obviously food manufacturers bear significant responsibility under, the U.S. law to minimize or completely eliminate chemical hazards like lead from their products. So the FDA's regulatory framework, including action levels and compliance policy guides, it provides clear directives for the industry. So the guidelines are designed to help companies meet legal obligations and ensure that their products are safe. So in terms of limits, one of the notable regulations is the FDA's strict limit on lead in bottled water, which is set at 5 parts per billion, which is more stringent than the 15 parts per billion allowed in public drinking water that was established by the Environmental Protection Agency. And additionally, the FDA has banned the use of lead solder, I think solder or solder, in food cans. And has established labeling requirements for ornamental ceramic ware containing lead to prevent its misuse with food. And the FDA's approach extends beyond regulation enforcement to include collaboration with industry and other stakeholders. So this partnership aims to develop sustainable strategies that reduce lead levels in food while also preserving the nutritional quality and accessibility of these products. So the FDA's commitment to protecting consumers, especially vulnerable groups, underscores the critical importance of adhering to these regulatory standards. So for the food industry, compliance isn't just about avoiding regulatory penalties. That's the goal, but also it's about safeguarding public health. So as research continues to advance and testing methods become more precise, the industry has to stay informed and be proactive in mitigating lead contamination risks. And this ongoing collaboration between the FDA and the food industry is vital to achieving the shared goal of ensuring a safe and nutritious food supply for everyone. So you were talking about, what we don't need lead in our bodies.
I think I'm pretty
sure.
No,
I agree with you. I'm pretty sure that's true. But why? Do you know why it's so prevalently used, or it was in the past, in paints and pipes and things like that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I think it was just
I'll look it up.
Yeah, perhaps this metal is easy to source.
Okay, so in paint, for example, according to my quick research, lead is added to paint to accelerate drying, increase durability, and maintain a fresh appearance, and resist moisture that causes corrosion.
Okay.
That's interesting. And it was banned due to health concerns. And that's interesting because, like, you know, with food, I completely understand if it's toxic to us, we shouldn't be eating food that contains lead. But with paint, you're not eating paint.
You know what happens? And this happened to me once, actually.
Oh,
when
did it?
Yeah, when you use paint, many people don't wear like
protective masks, gloves.
Yeah, so many people, they do a home paint job.
Yeah.
They just use their bare hands, and it seeps onto their hands, and and it's on their skin. So that's another route of exposure, right? And that's why, because people don't wear the protective equipment.
Oh, I was thinking that that even just being in a room with lead paint, like it, like, that's what I was thinking.
Perhaps
but
it
yours makes way more sense.
In a little bit in aerosol particles, but I think it's mostly like the skin exposure that they are trying to eliminate.
Got it.
And then you also said there was another thing.
In pipes. So I just looked this up now. Lead was used for centuries in plumbing because of its pliability and resistance to leaks. So similar. And it's funny that with the paint, it said it was resistant or, you know, corrosion proof. But I think after a certain amount of time, they do corrode and it does seep into water, whatever it is. And it says, in fact, lead's chemical symbol, Pb, is derived from the Latin word for plumbing.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
No, but lots of chemicals are named after like Latin words, so it's not surprising.
Plumbing, that's so interesting. Okay, so I'm understanding now why lead was used, and you know it made sense at the time. I'm sure, you know, when it had been used, we just didn't know. We didn't know the potential risks of it, and now that we do, I think that the goal is just to try and minimize and test as much as possible, especially in baby food, and foods that babies and kids and adults eat. Like kids eat cinnamon and chocolate too. So
even just chocolate itself is found in so many different food products.
And it's interesting because it's just dark chocolate that was the risk rather than like milk or other types of chocolate.
It's more diluted.
Yeah, exactly. It's more diluted. So, and it's more like natural, I guess, dark chocolate, less additives. So yeah, it's interesting. But you know, this is a good step forward, I would say. And the other thing is that I feel like we talk about this all the time, but we're not really going to know the outcomes or sort of the you know, lead for a long time. Like, we know that it's not good for our bodies, but it always takes like decades, if not like centuries, to sort of see the effects of it. Hopefully we don't. I've never known anyone personally who's had like lead poisoning. I imagine in you know, certain jobs where it's still used, I guess, you know, there's a higher risk, but hopefully regular people don't get poisoned via food from lead.
Yeah, no, that should not be happening in this century.
Yes. It's like if like a very old disease came back.
Yeah, pretty much. It should not be happening, and it's good that the FDA is being more strict with their limits. Yeah,
and I just said this, but like, because it's so preventable. It's not one of those chemicals that's like, for example, you know, that chemical or that product that was used for like nonstick pans.
Oh, PFAS.
Yeah.
And PFAS.
No, not PFAS. It was PTFE is what. Oh, Teflon. That's the word I was thinking of. Teflon.
Teflon?
Yeah, Teflon. Like, they used to call them Teflon pans, and you know, that proved to be extremely toxic to humans, to the point where like there was a plant that produced Teflon products, and the people that lived in the surrounding area like had cancer, and because it seeped into the water and whatnot. There was a whole documentary about it. It was like really sad.
Oh my gosh.
But lead feels different because it's not even directly part of the food. Like, it's not helpful.
Yes.
Like Teflon, I understand why it was used. It was like, easy, nonstick, whatever. But lead doesn't even need to be anywhere in the equation whatsoever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's the difference. Hopefully, the effects of lead will not be as serious as the effects of Teflon. All right, so moving on to another story. We had a big acquisition recently, so very monumental deal. Mars acquired Kellanova, which is the maker of Pringles and Pop-Tarts and many other brands, for a whopping $36 billion. So this acquisition marks one of the most significant transactions in the food industry this year, expanding Mars's reach into the snack and cereal markets. So Mars, which is known for its iconic brands like M&M's and Snickers, has agreed to purchase Kellanova for $83.50 per share in an all-cash transaction. And this price reflects a substantial premium, over 69%, compared to Kellanova's recent share value. And additionally, Mars will assume more than $6 billion in Kellanova's net debt, bringing the total value to $36 billion. So despite facing challenges in consumer spending due to inflation, Kellanova has outperformed expectations. And the company recently raised a full year sales forecast after a strong earnings report. So Kellanova's ability to navigate these headwinds made it a very attractive acquisition target. Mars' CEO, Paul Weyrauch, recently emphasized in a press release that acquiring Kellanova would enhance Mars's portfolio by adding categories such as salty snacks, crackers, and cereals. He noted that Kellanova's strong presence in regions like Africa and Latin America would significantly extend Mars's global footprint. So he said, "We will honor the heritage and innovation behind Kellanova's incredible snacking and food brands while combining our respective strengths to deliver more choice and innovation to consumers and customers. We have tremendous respect for the storied legacy that Kellanova has built and look forward to welcoming the Kellanova team." So before the show, Vera, you were mentioning that you feel bad for Kellogg's and Kellanova. Why was that?
It's just like, so one thing that I think we should clarify is, like, even if a food company is acquired by a larger food company, it's usually the case, they still keep the brand name on the labels of the company they acquired. So it's not like they're going to change the Kellanova symbol now to Mars, right? They usually just keep it as a subgroup within Mars.
Yes.
So many people wouldn't even be aware that they were acquired, right? Because they keep the same brand name and labeling on the food products. So that's what I realized after I made the comment that I felt bad for Kellanova and Kellogg's, just because, growing up as a kid, it was quite a brand name, and it was kind of like every morning if you had cereal, there was their logo. It's a bit of nostalgia there, but I after making that comment, I realized that Mars is going to keep their branding, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, because we've seen it before. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Oreo, iconic brand, not having to do with either of these companies, but it was once owned by Nabisco, and now it's owned by Mondelez International. Maybe they merged or something, but my point is, people still knew it was Oreo. Like, not much changed except for maybe a very small thing on packaging. Like, maybe there's a little Mondelez thing where Nabisco once was. So I think a huge part of acquisitions like this is maintaining that branding, because you have such loyal customers who would be confused if they saw Mars cereal. They'd be confused about that. So I think if anything, there'll just be something on the back of the packaging just saying owned by,
or produced by,
or distributed, whatever it is, by Mars. So yes, that's the good news, is that we're not going to be seeing Mars Pop-Tarts and Mars Pringles or Mars cereal. It'll stay, the branding will stay the same, which is good and will lessen the confusion.
I have a question about that, Sydney. Do you think that's beneficial to Mars's brand name and to other, food companies when they acquire another food brand and they keep the branding the same and they don't eventually phase it out to their branding? Like, wouldn't it be in their interest to eventually change it to Mars so that Mars is like
cohesive.
it is already a household name, but
Yes.
so that its name and logo is on more food products. Wouldn't that be more beneficial to the company?
I
in the
had
long
not
term?
thought about that.
I wonder if they have thought about that either. They're just thinking about right now, short term.
Yeah.
Let's not confuse consumers because then we may lose sales.
I'm trying to think if there has been an example of that in the past where there's been a major acquisition and the branding has completely changed. So I think the most they would ever do is I don't think they would change brand names that already exist, but I think they would, maybe just add their logo or something onto existing products. I think the point of this acquisition was to sort of, in addition to expanding their portfolio, I think they probably have like better distribution and better worldwide reach. And I think they'll do just as good of a job, if not better of a job, selling these products, no matter what name they're under.
Right.
So, but maybe in the future, maybe we'll see Mars cereal. Yeah. And we may also see like new products, like collabs between existing like Mars products and Kellanova products.
Yeah.
I would
possible.
Definitely eat Mars cereal. It's just Mars bars and milk, basically. So that could be like a possibility. But I'll get back to you on that, whether I think.
I think most of the times they just leave the original branding and the packaging kind of the same. Maybe in the future they'll experiment with the packaging a bit more.
Because like people are very like resistant to change, especially when it comes to like formulations of products. Like I could care less what packaging looks like, but if it tastes different, I'm sad now.
Yeah. But sometimes people tend to associate a different packaging with a different like formulation as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I actually went to the States recently, just crossed the border to do some shopping and got a cereal, a Kellogg cereal that I like ate when I was a kid, and they only have it there. And if the formula for that changed, or if they changed that product, I would be devastated. So devastated. So I'm hoping that they keep the formula. They can change the packaging. That's fine. They could change even the branding. But I think to consumers, like maintaining the consistency is like the most important aspect for existing products, at least. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they'll spawn many new products from coming together, which should be very interesting to see, because Kellanova, just to clarify, it was formed in just last year after Kellogg's separation of its breakfast cereals and snack businesses. It brings well-known brands like Cheez-It, Rice Krispie Treats, Eggo waffles, many others to Mars's portfolio. So under Mars's ownership now, the division will be led by Andrew Clark, who's the global president of Mars Snacking. So Mars, on the other hand, is one of the largest family-owned businesses globally. It's family-owned. And it boasts sales exceeding $50 billion and employs over 150,000 people. So in contrast, Kellanova reported revenues of $13 billion in 2023, a measly $13 billion. So the acquisition was unanimously approved by Mars's 11-member board, and the company plans to finance the deal through cash reserves and new debt. So this Mars acquisition is expected to face some antitrust scrutiny, particularly from the Biden administration's competitive watchdogs, known for aggressively challenging large mergers. However, Weyroch expressed confidence that the deal would pass through regulatory review, as companies' product lines do not directly compete. So while deal making in the sector has sort of slowed down a little bit in recent years, Mars's acquisition comes at a time when activity is starting to pick up again. So if approved, the transactions could signal the beginning of a new wave of mergers and acquisitions in the food industry. So Mars is hoping to finalize this deal in the first half of next year. So hasn't officially gone through yet, but it's expected to.
This is something new. I didn't know it has to pass through like a regulatory stamp of approval.
Well, because I think if I'm no finance expert here whatsoever, but I think if you don't have any like regulatory, if you don't have laws, I think a lot of shady things can happen when companies like merge and acquire other companies because, there are always greedy folks hoping to get their paws on the most assets. And I think there needs to be like, rules in place to just make sure that like it's kosher, so to speak. And but they're pretty, sure that they'll pass, that it'll pass the regulatory review.
And then you also mentioned something about it should be easy to pass through this review because they don't sell competing products.
Because the product lines don't directly compete. So I think I think they want to avoid monopolies.
Right.
I think that's a really big part of, just making sure that these acquisitions are okay. They don't want, they don't want there to be like an Amazon of like food companies, which there already is. Like, but because when food companies get too big, then they're going to have too much control in the market, and they'll be able to do whatever they want with prices and just rip off consumers and profit from illegal or bad things. So I think that's kind of why.
And competition is always good.
Of course, exactly. So that's why it's got to pass. Perhaps these are newer regulations, and I think they're probably specific. There are specific ones for food as well, because all industries face sort of different challenges, but.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there's regulations about M&A deals. That's interesting.
Because that's kind of why it takes so long, you could say. Like it takes a very long time for these things to actually go through. Similarly, why like it takes a while for IPOs to happen, I would say.
Right.
Because like if any company could go public, I think it would just be like a crazy free for all. So there's a lot of checking that needs to be done, especially with a workforce of 150,000 people. There's a lot that needs to happen before these things can pass. And I think they want to be proactive and get ahead of everything like staffing and whatever else needs to change before it goes through. So,
Interesting.
Yeah. All right, well, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Food Podcast. If you like today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks, everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Xtalks Food Industry Podcast. If you enjoyed our discussions today, please share the episode with your friends and colleagues, and be sure to subscribe in order to be notified when a new episode is released. To join in on the discussion, you can find Xtalks on social media. Email podcast@xtalks.com or comment on the articles directly. Links are in the show description. Take a moment to join our community at xtalks.com to get access to everything we have to offer, including webinars, job listings, virtual meetings, articles, and more. The views and opinions expressed in the podcast are those of the speakers sharing them. They should not be taken as professional advice and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.